Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. We are Brigade of Beings, a diagnosed dissociative identity disorder system. My name is Atlas and this video is about gender and dissociative identity disorder. I want to start this video off by discussing the concept of a collective identity. This isn't something that every system will experience, but it is one that is kind of common. For some systems, their collective identity will align with the identity of the host, but for us, it doesn't. Our collective identity is pretty similar to my identity as the host, but there are some key differences. For example, I, as an alter, am a binary trans man, and I exclusively use he, him pronouns. However, our collective identity when we are interacting with the world is just transmasculine, genderqueer, and we use he, they pronouns. The they in those pronoun sets is partially to represent the fact that we are a system, that there are multiple of us, although we don't out that to everyone that we meet, and also to reflect the alters in our system who are not binary trans men or binary men. In fact, we have alters in our system who are binary women, and their existence within our system does not negate the fact that we are trans, but it does shape our trans experience, and it does make life a little bit more different for a trans system than that of a non-system trans person. We have a collective identity as a system because we mask our dissociative identity disorder, and it is easier for us to have a collective identity that is close to multiple frequent fronters than for all of our frequent fronters to try and pretend to be me. It is our collective identity that is an authentic representation of all of us that we utilize, I guess for lack of a better way to put it, when seeking gender-affirming care. I can probably make a whole video about a collective identity, but it is something that represents all of us. Although it is a mask, it isn't coming from nowhere. It draws aspects of many of our frequent frontiers, many of the alters that hold a very prominent part in our system, and it reflects a lot of us. And so when we were seeking gender-affirming care, we went off the basis of that collective identity. We used genderqueer as our preferred label, and we also disclosed that we have dissociative identity disorder when seeking gender-affirming care. We were very lucky that that diagnosis did not impact our ability to access care, although for some people it can. But because of where we live, because of the supports that we have in place, because of our long-term GP and our long-term psychologist, it did not impact our ability to get on hormone replacement therapy. Because despite being a system that still has cis alters, or cis female alters I should say, we still experienced a lot of gender dysphoria in our day-to-day life, and it heavily impacted us. And since starting HRT, it has given us a lot of gender euphoria, because the cis female alters in our system do not front frequently enough to really have a big say on what we do with our body. We like to use the analogy of all being roommates, right? We all live in one shared apartment, and there are those of us who care more about the apartment or who spend more time in the apartment than others. Like, we consider, like, our frequent fronters would be the people who live in the apartment all of the time. Our semi-frequent fronters might be people who come for extended holidays to the apartment. And then we have alters who hardly ever front, who we liken to someone's boyfriend who comes over for a couple of nights each year. And like, yes, he's still important. Yes, his opinions still matter in this hypothetical. But like, you're not going to really take his opinion seriously when it comes to what you're going to paint the walls, because he doesn't live there long enough. And the same way, the female alters who were against our gender transition front maybe once a month, if that. And so whilst their opinion was still valued and we still discussed it with them, ultimately they were overruled by the majority. And that doesn't mean that we just didn't care about their opinions, because we do. I feel kind of shitty to have put them in a position where they now experience gender dysphoria. But it also has meant that for those of us who front every single day, our gender dysphoria is significantly less and we are significantly more comfortable in our body. And that has been absolutely amazing. We have a clip that one of the cis female alters in our system filmed about her experiences since we've started HRT. So I'm going to cut to that clip and then I will be back after that. Hi everybody, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Rachel and I'm a cis female alter in our system. So as we've already discussed, we are collectively transmasculine. But if that's the case, how can I, a cis female alter, exist? And that's pretty simple. Part of having dissociative identity disorder, or a really common part of dissociative identity disorder, I should say, is having alters that are different genders. And that doesn't just mean binary genders either. You can have male alters, you can have female alters, and you can have genderqueer alters, or any label underneath that very large umbrella. And despite the fact that we are taking hormone replacement therapy, despite the fact that we are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and that we are pursuing a medical transition to become more masculine, I'm still a cis female. My internal body is a female body, and realistically, our physical body is assigned female at birth, and because I identify with the gender assigned at birth, I'm cis. Before we started medically transitioning, I didn't experience gender dysphoria, but I did experience a disconnect from my body. This body doesn't look like my own. I have purple hair, I have green eyes, my build is very different to that of the body, my voice sounds different to that of the body even before we transitioned. Like, this body has never really felt like mine, but it at least aligned with my gender. But after we started HRT, I have experienced gender dysphoria for the first time. I have gender dysphoria about the fact that we grow facial hair now. I experience dysphoria around other body hair. Like, our legs are a lot hairier, our stomach is a lot hairier, and that, no, not for me. If I were a singlet, like if I was a whole, like if I myself was just the only person present in this body, the only alter present in this body, I would not have sought out gender transition at all, because I'm not a trans guy, and I'm not trans, I'm not genderqueer, I am a cis woman. But I'm not the only alter in the system, and I don't really front that much, and when I front, I'm not really engaging with other people. I typically front to just write or to plan out stories. I don't really front and go to social events or film videos even. This is new to me and a bit overwhelming, honestly. I don't normally do makeup either, but I wanted to look nice for the video. But because I don't front all that often, and because I'm not, like, I don't really need to have a say over what we do with our life. Like, I'm not really connected to most of what we do with our life. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. I didn't have any qualms when it came to the rest of the system deciding to transition. I didn't realize that I would experience gender dysphoria. Like, you'd think that'd be obvious, but because the body never felt like mine already, I thought that it wouldn't change that much, but it did. Like, the way that our voice sounds now is very different to how my own voice sounds. I'd like to take, like, voice training classes to practice getting it to sound more feminine again. This is the best that I can really do. But I also don't really even talk when I'm fronting, so it's not normally an issue. It's just an issue because I'm obviously filming a video, so I can hear it quite a bit right now. I don't really have too much to add. I just wanted to film this small segment so that you can kind of hear the perspective of one alter in our system who still identifies with our assigned gender at birth, but also doesn't really mind the fact that we're transitioning. Like, yes, even though I have dysphoria now, I'm okay with having dysphoria because it realistically, the gender dysphoria that I experience is so minimal compared to the gender dysphoria that our frequent fronters experienced before transition. So yeah, I hope that this little segment was helpful, and I'm going to hand it back to whoever's filming the main part of this video. It should also be noted that systems who do not collectively identify as trans, who do not choose to medically transition, can also have alters of a different gender to their body. It's pretty common. Not every system will experience it, but a lot of systems will. And there's probably something to say there about trauma and all that stuff, but that also doesn't devalue those experiences. Alters form as a protective mechanism, and whilst that protection might not always actually be protective, like realistically, like you have persecutors and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean that it's not the brain doing its best to cope with a situation. For example, if you're a little girl and growing up, The people that you have seen be strong in life, that you have seen get their way in life, that you've seen be safe in life, are all adult men, it is relatively likely that an alter will form who is an adult man, even if that is in the body of a young girl. Because that's what the brain sees as being safe and as being what is required to protect the system. On a similar note, if you are a young boy who is being neglected, and in media you see that women are often portrayed as caregivers and caretakers, you might split a caretaker who is a woman or a girl to help take care of you or to help make sure that you have a sense of belonging and a sense of safety that comes from within the system itself when external sources are not providing that connection and that safety and that care. And those are just two very basic, very clear-cut examples. And it should be noted that the way that gender is portrayed in the media and gender stereotypes can heavily influence the way alters form in a system. And whilst gender stereotypes are not great and we should be steering away from them, when alters are forming, it's the brain's subconscious forming those alters. It's not a conscious choice to do so. And so especially when alters are forming in childhood and you don't have critical thinking skills to examine, why might this be misogynistic? Your brain is just going to do what it can to protect itself and to take from its environment as to what it sees as safe. When it comes to gender expression, there can be quite fluid expressions of gender within a system, and that might mean that you are perceived as gender fluid. If you have a male alter who likes to wear jeans and a t-shirt and a binder and keep the body's hair short, or to put the hair up underneath a beanie or a hat to hide it, you might be perceived as a man or as more masculine or as trans, whether or not you collectively identify that way. On the other hand, if you have alters who like to wear dresses or more feminine cut clothing and makeup and have long hair or wear wigs, you'll probably be seen as more feminine. And so if you're a system who it feels safe enough to express those different presentations publicly, be that through online videos or actually leaving the house that way, you're probably going to be perceived as someone who is relatively fluid in their gender expression, if not fluid in their sense of gender altogether, especially if you change your pronouns depending on which alter is fronting. Some systems might choose to hide, for lack of a better word, the fact that different alters have different genders or different gender expressions. And so you might never notice, especially if a system is more covert. There is also probably something to say about the fact that trauma also informs gender within dissociative identity disorder. There might be the impression that if I was a boy, the specific trauma wouldn't have happened, or if I was a girl, the specific trauma wouldn't have happened, or this specific trauma happened to me because I'm a girl, or this specific trauma happened to me because I'm a boy. But just because trauma might inform the gender of specific alters within a system doesn't mean that they need to be fixed and that gender to be changed to be more congruent with that of the bodies. But at the same time, there might be alters who, as they process trauma or as they become more comfortable, change their gender identity or their pronouns or their gender expression to be more authentic to themselves. We have had 2 alters in our system who used all pronouns because they're very close. I might see if they specifically want to share. Hello. This is a 3D printed copy of our teeth. But that's not related to this video. My name is Mega. Maisie is also with me, and both of us used to use any pronouns. I used any pronouns because I thought I had to be whatever anybody else wanted me to be. So if they wanted me to be a girl, I'd use girl pronouns. Or if they wanted me to be a boy, I'd use boy pronouns. Or if they didn't want me to be either, then I would use they, them pronouns. But that's not who I really was. And then as I got to know the system better, and as I did therapy, or I watched other people do therapy, and as I learnt about being able to say no to things, I realized that I didn't have to use any pronouns and be what anybody wanted me to be. I could just be me, and so I started just using she, her pronouns. Maisie did the same thing, but slightly different, because Maisie also had fusions, which made it even more confusing for her. But I don't have any fusions. But I didn't get fixed into being a girl. I was never gender fluid to start with. I just thought that that was how other people wanted me to be. So that's what I said I was. But I was actually always a girl. And I'm in the body. Hi, my name is Maisie and I use she, her pronouns. I used to use any pronouns / mirror pronouns, which for those that don't know, mirror pronouns are just you use whatever your pronouns are for the other person. So if your pronouns were he, him, then you'd use he, him for me. But I don't use those anymore, I just use she, her. I had this expectation in myself that I had to be genderqueer of some variety because I fronted relatively frequently, or at least I used to, and the system was collectively genderqueer. So I thought that I also had to be genderqueer. So the same way that other people explore gender or explore gender transition, like those who don't have DID do, I explored it. I always knew that I liked dressing up, I liked putting on makeup, I liked presenting femininely, I liked being perceived as being traditionally attractive. I still was like, I feel like there's a little bit of gender fuckery going on. And to be fair, there is. I don't have any misgivings with our gender transition. I'm actually excited to grow more body hair. Whilst I still technically would choose to present in a, for lack of a better word, hyper feminine way, I guess, I don't mind our gender transition. I don't mind the idea of top surgery. That doesn't give me dysphoria. And so I thought that because the concept of gender transition didn't give me dysphoria, that meant that I must be genderqueer. But no, I'm a cis female alter who just doesn't mind that. I kind of like the idea of having facial hair and doing a pretty eyeshadow look. That sounds very fun to me, but I don't want facial hair for myself as an alter. I just don't mind the idea of facial hair on our body. And I don't quite know if that will make sense to people who don't have DID or to people who don't, yes, I care about my gender, but my gender, it's not ruled by the way that the body looks. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a bit confusing. Another reason that I didn't want to use she, her pronouns, I was afraid of being seen as a woman because there's a lot of danger that comes with being a woman, and there was a lot of trauma that I've personally experienced because I am a woman. And I didn't want that, and I rejected that, and so I tried to push it away and instead present as genderqueer. As if trans people don't also experience trauma and bigotry and violence, but I hadn't experienced that firsthand, but I had experienced violence towards women firsthand. But after a while and conversations and thinking to myself, I realized that no, I was just more comfortable being seen as a cis female alter, and that was okay. And that it didn't inherently mean that I was going to be harmed. Because realistically, if someone was going to harm me, they'd harm me no matter what pronouns I chose to use, because I'm still going to present the same way. And people who want to do harm to others are going to do it anyway, regardless of how their victim presents, or the terms that their victim uses, which is actually really disheartening and sad, but is the unfortunate truth. Hi everybody, it's Cryptic. I wanted to talk a little bit more about our transition and gender journey before we started HRT. So, as has already been mentioned, we started HRT 18 months ago, the very last day of August in 2023. We also did not realize that we were trans until 2020 after we graduated high school. We had a vague idea of what non binary meant before then, and we had an idea of what trans meant before then, but we didn't really put much stock into identifying that way ourselves. Part of it was because at the time there just wasn't the brain space to do that. We were dealing with a lot of other stuff, and examining our gender identity was just not something we had the ability to do. Not that it wasn't safe to do so, but we just did not have the brain space or capacity to even think about it. We were just a girl, and that was okay, but we didn't feel any particular strong adherence to that. I think one of the first big indicators to us as a system that we definitely were not a girl was our year 12 formal, where we all got dressed up and went to a fancy dinner with our school. And we did not pick out a traditional formal dress. We still wore a dress, but it wasn't a very traditional one. And it was the first time we had our makeup done professionally outside of weddings that we had been a part of. I'll put a photo on the screen of what we looked like. But we were incredibly uncomfortable in this outfit. We just didn't like the way that the makeup felt on our face. We didn't feel like we looked like ourselves. We were okay with the dress, but it also wasn't what we'd wanted. We'd wanted something that was more suit-like, but we didn't have the time or the brain space to be able to find something that actually fitted our needs, and we definitely didn't have the money to get something tailored. But we were tossing up just wearing a suit, but we didn't end up doing that. And we probably would have gone with wearing a suit if we'd had more time to think about it, if we really thought about what we wanted to, like a piece of clothing that we wanted to take with us, because buying a dress for a one time event isn't really something that we want to do. But if we'd bought a suit, we would have worn it again and again and again and again. But we didn't think about the re-wearability of that night's outfit. And that isn't to say that wanting to wear a suit made us trans or not wanting to wear a dress meant that we weren't a girl. It was just kind of the first inkling looking back that we were definitely uncomfortable with the gender presentation that we were doing or performing. I'm not really sure. And then 2020, which was the next year, was when we really started to explore different identity labels. We came out as non binary and started using they, them pronouns. And this is also when the system was beginning to become more overt and the host became aware of us, and things got a lot more complicated mental health wise. Over the next couple of years, we fluctuated between using non binary and genderqueer as our terms. We used a couple of other gender terms in there, like gender fluid. And eventually, once we decided to pursue medical transition, we settled on transmasculine because we felt like that accurately described what our physical body was going through and therefore what every alter in the system was experiencing by being a part of this body. Physically, our body was transitioning, and socially, we had been using they, them pronouns or they, he pronouns or they, neo pronouns or any mix of pronouns that weren't just she, her for several years. And so it took us a few years to settle on a term that really fits, and that term might change further down the road. If we end up in a situation where further down the line more female alters are fronting and present in our everyday life, we might end up changing to all pronouns again, or we might change our label to gender fluid. And that's okay. A gender identity doesn't have to be stagnant, especially when you're a system and when the dynamics of who is influencing your life can change. And this is just a reminder that it's just our experiences as a system. Other systems will have different experiences, and we encourage anyone who wants to share their experiences in the comments. We are very grateful that our DID diagnosis did not impact our ability to access hormone replacement therapy, but that isn't all that we want to do medically transition-wise. We would love to get top surgery, however, we can't afford it, and in Australia, it's not something that insurance covers. So realistically, we're probably just going to have to put up with that aspect of our body for several more years, if not our entire life. And whilst that's very disappointing and dysphoria-inducing for alters like myself, it means that alters like Maisie, alters like Rachel, other cis women alters in our system are more comfortable in our body because they don't want top surgery. Or, well, I think Maisie said that she didn't care, but alters like Rachel's especially don't want top surgery. There's also this weird thing that can happen where some of our female alters still get, I guess dysmorphia is a better word, around our chest because it's not as big as theirs is internally. And like that's still, I guess, a form of gender dysphoria because it would be gender affirming care if we got a boob job. Not that we'll ever, that's definitely off the table, but gender dysphoria doesn't just have to happen of alters who are of a different sex to that of the body, but also for alters who are of the same sex, but the body doesn't look the same as their internal body gender wise. Be that because maybe they're balding, or their chest is a different size, or they don't have as much body hair, or their voice is in a different vocal range. And it's just, it can be really, really confusing and hard to deal with living in a body that doesn't look like your own and does not feel like your own. I also want to conclude this video by saying I don't think that DID made us trans. I don't think that we're trans just because we have male alters. I think that if we'd never formed DID, we would still be trans. Although within our system, there's actually a pretty 50-50 split when it comes to genders. Like, there's about 50% of people who are male or male aligned and 50% of people who are female or female aligned. However, when it comes to fronting, it's like an 80-20 split. Like 80% of the people who front frequently in our life are male or male aligned, and only about 20% are female or female aligned. And I think that that's just really interesting that despite our system having a relatively even gender split, that is not how it ends up presenting externally, and it is not how we end up experiencing it in our day-to-day life. We would love to hear other systems' experiences with gender, be that as a trans system or as a cis system. That was a bit of a mouthful. But yes, thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.